Next. Sir.
I don't know if you made this point, but the temperature response to an increasing CO2 concentration is logarithmic.
Correcto.
Meaning that we've already gotten the biggest impact already. And a doubling of CO2 concentration is expected to raise global temperature only by 1.4 degrees or so.
Yeah, that's right. That's why, okay, you have the response to temperature, follow my graph, if you will, to carbon dioxide is logarithmic. The first increments in temperature give you the most warming, and then it begins to damp off. It never stops completely. We assume that CO2 is going in the atmosphere as a low-order exponential increase, a graph like this. You add up a logarithm and an exponent, what do you get? A straight line. You paid $10 billion for us to tell you that. Did you know that? And that's why those computer models all give straight line formings. Thank you very, very much. Yes, sir.
This is just a quickie, and this is not just because I totally agree with you.
Well, I like that.
But I think you're an absolutely great speaker, and this has been a wonderful speech, and thank you very, very much.
You're too kind. Now for the only female. Any more? Yes, sir.
I want to mention one more thing about there's evidence of higher sea level about 3,000 years ago around the world.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, it was warmer between probably around 4,000 years ago and 10,000 years ago. The Eurasian Arctic was several degrees warmer than it is now in the summer. How do we know that? Because now the boreal forest, the North Woods, extends up to about 150 miles away from the Arctic Ocean. And that's at its extreme north limit. Further east in Canada, it's quite a bit further south than that. If you dig in the tundra in Siberia, all the way up to the Arctic Ocean, when a tree falls in the tundra, pardon my California New Ageism, actually everybody notices because it falls into an acidic medium, and you can pull that tree out and carbon date it, and you can see from 6,000 to about 10,000 years ago that the boreal forest went all the way to the Arctic Ocean. It's more than that. It actually was on the islands, like Wrangel Island, that are in the Arctic Ocean. We know how warm July has to be for the boreal forest to exist. It has to be 6.5 degrees Celsius warmer in July than it is now on the average. What do you think the Arctic ice was doing at the end of summer for those millennia? It probably wasn't around, or if it was very sporadic. And you'll notice that the polar bear survived and the Inuit culture thrived.
I understand that there's been a number of weather stations that were either moved or there were industrial sources of heat built next to them, or previously they were in open areas. Has anybody attempted to actually quantify how much change this had on the models?
This man is a tool of the fossil fuel industry. I cannot. You go to those websites, you actually believe in the free exchange of information. I'm from Washington, and I'm here to control that. He's right. There's a site y'all need to look up. Oh, I have to give you my website, okay? Yeah. www. World Climate Report. One word, worldclimatereport.com. In this one, you'll see the story in the newspaper that Joe Blow said in Nature magazine that the world's come to an end. Well, you don't have the time to read Nature magazine to read the fine print. And eventually, you usually find that Joe Blow either did not say the world's coming to an end, or Joe Blow turns out to be full of beans. And World Climate Report takes these reports that come out all the time and does this. But the site he's talking about is called www.watts, W-A-T-T-S, up, U-P, with that. www.wattsupwiththat. Okay, my profession is full of nerds, in case you can't tell from the speaker. And the speaker was such a klutz that he ran into an air conditioner out there before this talk and knocked himself silly, by the way, which is why the talk's so funny. Anyway, and what nerds do is they go through pictures of weather stations. They probably have pictures of trains and airplanes too, like I do. Anyway, and Watts has got all these pictures of weather stations by air conditioning outlets, by power plants, over blacktop power, over blacktop parking lots. There's a really good one at BWI Airport, Baltimore Washington International. The jet blast clearly hits the weather station. And you know what? Because there are so many weather stations, nobody ever bothered to check for these effects. This guy is finding all these problems. Now, my friends at NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, insist that it's not a problem. Why? Because the data is homogenized. Yeah. Okay, my natural friends won't drink homogenized milk, and I suggest that you not base your policy on homogenized data. There are so many adjustments that go on with this, which you can read about and what's up with that, that you get the impression that human psychology is coming into this. That we have a theory and we know it has to be warming, and therefore this temperature record, which didn't show any warming, all of a sudden shows warming. Yes, check it out and enjoy.
Have you ever worked at the weather station at Crawford Knox, New Hampshire, way up there in Mount Washington?
I don't, I am sure that it's got a long-term record, and there is also a record on top of Mount Washington. Why?
I just wondered if it's a great weather station.
Oh yeah, the Mount Washington, I was a member of the Mount Washington Observatory a while back before I dropped my subscription because I was poor for a while.
Dave Wynn.
Dave Wynn.
I have a three-part question. Are you familiar with Prop 23? Do you think it's a good first step towards reversing AB 32? And can you speculate why Whitman may be against or is against Prop 23?
Number one, yes, I'm familiar with Prop 23. Number two, I work for the Cato Institute, a nonprofit think tank, and I would prefer to have just showed you that it does nothing. Make your own conclusions. And number three, you remember what I said about the Republican knocking out the Green Territory?
But will Prop 23 actually do
pass? Prop 20, if I read it correctly, Prop 23 will probably keep AB 32 from going into effect for quite some time. That seems to be it. I presume that its language is fine. The polls are all over the place. Does anybody have an idea what I saw? A field poll showed it down in double digits, and I saw another one that showed it up in double digits. And that's all I've seen.
What is it?
Prop 23?
Yes.
Oh, it's a ballot proposition that says that AB 32, which is the greenhouse gas limitations bill that I was talking about earlier, that was rammed through the Senate, state Senate one night, that it is suspended as long as unemployment in the state is above 5.5%. And I think it's about 5.5% right now. Last I heard. I'm glad I don't have property for sale. That's all I can say. But that's what it does. And the polls on it are all over the map right now.
Go ahead.
I'm just interested, none of this has been mentioned, but as I recall, does the sun have some effect on our climate? And also,
You mean it's warmer now than it was last night?
well, also, it seems to me
You could be a climatologist. You could testify in front of Congress.
what I learned a long time ago, but we had been through a lot of ice ages, and the last one was quite a few thousand years ago, and the ice has been basically disappearing since. So I assume that the globe is warming up on a natural.
Yeah, I remember the end of the Ice Age.
And it may turn around and get So do they take any of this into effect in all these fancy graphs? Everybody talks about it.
Okay, you notice I showed that the temperature histories, and I said, well, it's not warmed up that much because the problems with the oceanic record. Can I parenthetically go into a little discussion? The guy from East Anglia, who was one of the authors of that paper that showed the ocean temperature measured too cold in the mid-20th century, in the climate gate emails, somebody asked us, when are you going to update the temperature record? to show that there's less warming in it. And then the email comes back, we'll get around to it eventually. I don't know, I'm busy. If they had found that the ocean surface temperatures were measured far too warm back then, it would have been updated immediately, okay? Anyway, the answer to your question is, I showed all those things, and you notice I didn't show the solar effect on the temperature. Why? Because the estimates of solar effect on temperature are pretty variable. If you believe Scafetta and West from Duke, it would be about maybe a third of the warming, or maybe half of the warming of the early 20th century, and a smaller fraction of the warming of the late 20th century. If you would believe Mike Mann or somebody like that, you'd see a lot less. So the numbers are so noisy that I would prefer not to put something up that somebody in the audience can sit and throw a brick at that's going to hit. So I don't put it up. But there is a solar effect. You know, like I say, the main theory of climatology, you know, you've heard climatology is the most complicated science on Earth. You want to know the main theory of climatology? The sun warms the Earth. And then the Earth gets more radiation at the equator than it does at the poles. That may shock you. Did you know that scientists once believed that there was open water at the North Pole? And if you didn't believe that, even though there was ice all over it, if you didn't believe that, you were ostracized from the geographic community. Just thought I'd point this out.
Folks, we got to move on to our last part of the program, but let's give this good doctor one more round of applause.